So almost a week ago, I saw this article about Google apparently replacing headlines with AI headlines in their Google Discover feed. Now, not a ton of people are using the Google Discover feed, but it was just like something that's another thing that AI has taken over. And a lot of these AI titles were actually super incorrect. Like they were lacking context. They didn't actually read too deep into the article. They kind of just rephrased what the title was already into usually about 4 words. And half the time, things that were sarcastic weren't properly explained in the title. Like I didn't really understand literary techniques. And so a couple examples was so there's this game called Baldur's Gate 3, and there was an article from PC Gamer, and the title was "Child Labor is Unbeatable. Baldur's Gate 3 players discover how to build an army of unkillable kids through the power of polymorph and German media laws." Now, what that really means is that in that video game, the children NPC characters are invincible. So you could add them to your group and basically have an invincible group of players, and thus making it unkillable. The AI headline says BG3, Baldur's Gate 3 players exploit children. That sounds crazy, right? Because what they're doing is they're just taking advantage of an in-game system, but the headline makes it seem like it's taking advantage of real children, which is insane. Another one that was pretty weird was there was a headline that originally read, "Valve's Steam machine looks like a console, but don't expect it to be priced like one." The AI headline changed that to "Steam machine price revealed." Now, the Steam machine has not had its price revealed, so essentially it lied. It just took the explanation that the title was giving and essentially just reworded it to kind of make sense in its own words. And it's completely wrong. But Google does state that the AI headlines are just an experiment for now. But as with everything that's AI, it's an experiment for now. And then, 6 months later, it's fully rolled out. And now we've got AI headlines everywhere. And AI articles and now AI headlines are just like the newest layer of increasing the spread of misinformation. We've had to deal with social media as kind of the biggest layer in a misinformation spreading cake, right? It's been basically social media as that base layer. And then for a while there, we had AI images and video. That's still a problem, especially as these image generators and video generators get better. We've had AI articles. There was actually a study going out that apparently about half of all articles written were made by AI, which is insane. Now, that does sound crazier than it might be because apparently a lot of the AI articles don't get surfaced on Google searches. So you might not actually be reading them as often. But still, even if they aren't being searched on, when people are using ChatGPT or AI overview on Google Gemini, that kind of thing, and they're asking questions, those models take their information from articles and things that are written online. So essentially, you could have a situation where it's referencing information to answer a question from an AI article. So AI referencing AI, which can lead to all types of problems, right? And now on top of that, we had AI news headlines, right? And let's be honest, there are too many people who read headlines and not the full article. They'll just read the headline and go strictly off of that. And that's not even mentioning the damage it does to the art of journalism. Now, that's not to say AI has been purely negative. It definitely has its upsides, especially for businesses, for things like agentic stuff that they're doing or in-house AI models that they're creating for employees and stuff like that. But for regular people like you and I, it's been more of a convenience thing than a computing evolution. It's things like summarizing text, drafting emails, and giving you incorrect answers to your questions. Some people have even turned or have actually formed, emotional relationships with AI companions, and I use that word extremely loosely, which is honestly pretty concerning. And we have stories, unfortunately, of people, taking their life due to what an AI had told them to do. So there's a lot of back and forth. And realistically, these AI companies are essentially selling us on the promise of what AI will be in the future. But for now, it really hasn't lived up to the expectations that they're really touting. Now, to get to that future that they're, touting and marketing everywhere, the AI space and all these various companies are scrambling to build more and more data centers. That's leading to issues with local power grids not being able to hold up, water distribution having problems in small towns and cities, and now believe it or not, a new problem has sprung up. That's the RAM shortage. So what is RAM? RAM is random access memory, and for just a baseline view, it's a type of storage that computers will use. It's relatively small, and it houses all the files that your computer is currently using at the moment. And basically every single computer in the world uses RAM. Now, computer builders and gamers, things like that, noticed about 2 weeks ago or so that RAM prices were skyrocketing. And we hadn't known exactly why at the time, but we had some speculation. And really what we found out, it was due to essentially a lack of supply. The demand was there, but these RAM manufacturers couldn't keep up. Now, what really happened is that RAM manufacturers were shifting their RAM manufacturing capacity to AI companies that were feeding their data centers, because these AI companies were actually outbidding the consumer device makers on getting the capacity and getting their allocation of those RAM chips. At the moment, there are only 3 major RAM manufacturers. So that's SK Hynix, Samsung, and Micron. There are some other small ones, like especially in China, that are growing, but for now, those 3 pretty much take over the entire RAM manufacturing market share. And actually on that note, with Micron just killed their Crucial brand, which was their brand of consumer RAM and storage products. And they've actually had that brand for about 30 years, and now they killed it. So now that means we've got one less RAM manufacturer. That sucks because less, people in the consumer market means that there's a better chance of brands doing even more price fixing, or artificially increasing prices, et cetera, et cetera. But being a manufacturer is not the same thing as just being a RAM, like actual product seller. There are a lot of companies like Corsair, Team Group, et cetera, that sell RAM full modules that actually go into the computers, versus the ones who actually manufacture the chips. So it's not exactly apples to apples, but it still sucks to see one less brand not be in the consumer space. But really, how does it affect you directly? So basically, like I mentioned, anyone who's building computers, RAM prices are going to be significantly more than they would have been a couple months ago. We're talking double, 3 times, sometimes even more, depending on what type of RAM you're trying to get. So what does that mean for anyone else? Game consoles, the PS5, Xbox, the Nintendo Switch 2, those might see price increases. Automotive world, cars, these are all used computers in basically every car there is now that's being on sale. And so those need their, stockpile of RAM. Cameras, what I'm shooting on now. Basically anything that runs with a computer. Medical devices in the medical world, those might see increases, as well. But, it's going to be more of a trickle down effect. It'll take some time for the effect to really hit. But right now, as far as the upper management of people who have spoken in interviews about the RAM shortage, there's basically no end in sight currently. RAM shortage is expected to worsen next year as well as 2027. And that's really because it takes about 3 years or so for a RAM manufacturer to actually build new manufacturing capacity. And that's assuming that they decided to build one starting today, right? And so there really isn't any major incentive for these RAM manufacturers to build more capacity, because at the moment they're selling all of their capacity for significantly more. They're making a ton of money. For them, this is a gold mine, right? And so they can take their sweet time in building more capacity, because realistically, the consumer market won't pay as much as these AI companies. Look, I know this video is a bit of a downer, but I figured it's better to let you guys know now than for you guys to miss out on what could possibly be the last amount of decently priced stock that we have for a while. So for anyone who's looking to buy RAM, if you missed out on the Black Friday sales and you're looking to build a computer of some sort, then take advantage of any holiday deals that might spring up from now until the end of the year. Because again, this might be your last chance to find anything for remotely reasonable prices. Well, if you liked the video, maybe not like, because this is a topic no one likes, but if you learned something new, leave a like, drop a comment down below on what prices you guys have seen, in your local retailers, things like that for RAM. And if you guys find any good deals, of course, drop them down below for other people to take advantage of. Other than that, I'll see you guys later. Peace.